Welcome everyone to our fall Vivid webinar series. Our topic today is called Accelerate Cloud Outcomes with Hybrid Cloud Management. This webinar is brought to you by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I am your host today. My name is Rocky Pisto. I'm a Vivid chapter leader in a number of areas, also part of the BSM SIG, and very active in the Vivid community. Today's speakers from HPE are Louise Hang, who is the Chief Technologist in the Cloud Hybrid Delivery area within HP Enterprise, and Sebastian Richter, a Cloud Chief Technologist with HP Enterprise. And next we're going to provide 3 polling questions for you to answer. And let's go with, I guess we have a few more housekeeping things, that's right. This is a live recorded session. So if you're not on this call today but want to see the webinar in the future, or you are and want to see the presentation with all the detailed questions, it will be recorded along with the Q&A, and that you'll have access to that in a few days. But for today's webinar, if you plan to ask questions, we have a question panel. Next. And the question panel is located in the webinar control panel on your right. You'll see an area that says, that points to questions. You can type in your questions there, and we will try to get to them today. If we can't get to them, they will be answered after the webinar has been recorded. You'll get a complete document with the recording, with all the questions and the answers to the questions. Next. So before we start the presentation, again, we have 3 polling questions. And the first one is on the screen as we speak, and the title is, which of the following cloud management capabilities do you find most challenging? Check all that apply. So there's monitoring, compliance challenges, workload placement, showback, charging, billing, and the last one is capacity management. So please take a few seconds to check off the challenges that you're having within your organization, and we'll get some results here in just about 10 seconds or so. Just trying to get a feel for the audience and where they're feeling the pain within their organization, so we can share that with the HP team on the call, and it kind of helps guide the presentation as well. So Terry, let's see what we've got. So the results are in. Great job. So percentage-wise, the highest or the most challenging area that we're seeing is in capacity management at 65%. Monitoring comes in at 59%. Workload placement is 47%. Compliance is 41%. And showback, charging, billing is at 35%. So good feedback. Let's go to the second polling question. So we have now the second polling question, and it's, what is your biggest issue with cloud management? And the options are, and please select one in this particular panel. It's inadequate tools, lack of skills, lack of overarching architecture, tool integrations, and the last one is, don't know where to start. So we'll give everyone a few seconds to check off what they seem to think is their big issue in cloud management. It sure has evolved through the years, that's for sure. And we're seeing more and more applications going that way. corporate America. Okay, Terry, let's see what the results are. Great. So here's what we're seeing. Boy, it's pretty even across the board. At 25% of people on the call, lack of overarching architecture, tool integration, don't know where to start, are all at 25%. And lack of skills is about 15% of the biggest issue of cloud management. And the last one is inadequate tools. So I guess it revolves around just lack of understanding of how all this stuff works and how they tie together with existing technology. So let's go to the last polling question. Great. So in your organization, what is cloud mostly used for? Is it self-service provisioning, DevOps, big data, data analytics, application migration, or we're not using cloud at all? So take a few seconds to answer that. And this will give our team on the call a good feel for, how you're using cloud, if you're using it at all, in what areas, and we'll go from there. So another 5 seconds or so. Okay, Terry, let's see what the results are. So, little different scenario here. How is cloud mostly used in our environments? Self-service provisioning seems to be the #1 solution at 32%. Application migration is 27%. We are not using cloud, 23%. So there's still a number of people that aren't using any of the technology yet. DevOps is at 9%. Same as big data and data analytics, both at 9%. So the self-service provisioning leads the pack here. And with that, Louise, I think I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rocky. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So great polling exercise to give me an idea of where everybody's head is today and why we're here to talk about what the Cloud Model Office is all about. The first thing that I'd like to say is when we, Sebastian and I are from our HPE Software Services organization, and as the new digital enterprise evolves, we have been focusing on how to accelerate our customers' capability to consume some of the new strategies. And cloud is one of those strategies that underpins moving to the digital enterprise. So with that, we've looked at reference architecture as a basis for us moving customers forward, and we've chosen to use the IT for IT reference model. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through the presentation, and then Sebastian will do a demonstration of the model itself. But if you remember, in the years past, our older generation of optimization, we really focused on optimizing practices around application lifecycle management and IT operations. But we really didn't chain them together to get the value out of the end-to-end, blueprint of operations and applications management. What this IT for IT framework does is gives us a new way to think about that blueprint and ties the capabilities together in these integrated value chains that all enterprises across the world use. So these 4 value chains are very key into what we used as a basis for constructing our cloud model. Strategy to portfolio is a value chain around taking our strategy of the enterprise, not of IT, but of the enterprise, to a portfolio of services. Requirements to deploy, what are those services and how will we deploy those? Requests to fulfill, how do we make those services consumable? And then detect to correct is all about now in runtime, what will those services do as far as fulfilling the requirements that the consumer has in the beginning. So it sounds like from the polling, there's a mixture of folks that have either started to use cloud or aren't using cloud at all. And so the reality of what's top of mind today is really our customers are asking us, well, how do I use the HPE software and integrate it into my current environment? And where do I start? What use cases should I start with? And then what do those look like once I actually implement those use cases? So we're going to do a little bit about trying to simplify that today for you. The model office. So what is the model? In simplifying this message of digital enterprise and hybrid management, the model is really about showcasing the art of the possible. What is possible with cloud, and how do I make it work and function for my organization? So we wanted to accelerate a proof of concept, even accelerate some parts of the implementation of private cloud in your organization or hybrid cloud. We have more than just the cloud model office. We do also have the DevOps model, the mobility model, and the service broker model. And as you'll see, as your enterprise evolves over this new era of digital, you will see that all of these models eventually integrate and come together to support the acceleration of the speed to value you need for your business customers. So I'm going to go back to this value chain concept. And today when I go meet with customers, I talk to them at the whiteboard and I say, you know, it's a new way to think about how to implement this, you know, speed to value, our speed to market, the reduction of cost, and the quality and the assurance and the securitization that you're all looking for. So it's a new way, a new paradigm. And no matter what you're trying to accomplish, whether it be cloud or DevOps or brokerage or just helping your enterprise move forward, eliminating shadow IT, you need to think about your consumer and what you're going to offer that consumer. So we really didn't do a great job in the ITIL days about portfolio management. Well, we're back there again. And we need to know about the enterprise strategy enough to know what our consumers in the business are looking for. So what does my line of business need? What is that portfolio of services that I need to build so that they'll stay with me in IT, and I'll make the decision for where those resources come from. And then once I understand what the consumer needs, I want to build out those service offerings. And to the level of detail, I need to design them. And then once I design those offerings, that helps me identify all the criteria I need to support that end user's point of view. And then once I have that end user point of view, I can actually fulfill those offerings through a catalog, make an implementation view available, and allow the consumers on demand. So I saw that the self-service capability is something that many of you are familiar with. In a lot of the customers I've worked with, they've decided for themselves in IT what services the business would need. Who are their consumers? Wasn't really an issue. It was really, I'll just build a bunch of IT services and then they'll come and use them, without the idea of really internally marketing to the enterprise customers. So in a lot of cases, that build it, they will come theory did not work. And they're back to engaging the line of business owners to figure out what they really need to support the applications and the speed to market that the enterprise line of business customers need. So overall, when we started to build the model, this was the blueprint. The blueprint was, okay, guys, where do we start? How do we, evolve this model so that our customers get the benefit of the template, so that we can help them organize their thoughts and their understanding of their constraints and their challenges to bringing this model forward into their organization. So once again, it was all organized around the 4 value chains. And a lot of, I think some of the polling talked about, the application migration being one of the top initiatives. So when you think about your line of business customers and they're looking at their applications and their projects moving more swiftly in an agile fashion, how do we take that demand into a portfolio of services so that I can give them the infrastructure or the environments that they need to do that work? And how do I make it priced properly so that they don't go and do shadow IT, but they come into the retained IT environment to establish the right cost benefit on their investment of time and resources and getting their products to market. So there's a lot that goes into the strategy component that we totally, we did some enterprise architecture, but we really didn't do a lot about demand and portfolio management in eras past. So with this template, we're defining that demand, and we're identifying how we need to fulfill that demand through designing good services. And the service definition isn't just, I'm going to plug in Azure or Amazon or Rackspace or SoftLayer. I'm going to define the service so that it meets the requirements to compliance, regulatory arena compliance, software compliance, security compliance. So all the policies that are important need to be built into those service definitions, and the requirements to deploy phase is all about that, really identifying what the service requirements are, what resources that will fulfill that service requirement successfully. Do I bring them in from a public domain, or do I source them from my internal private cloud? So those are the decisions in the design step. And then in the fulfillment step is, how do I actually fulfill the orders? What's that orchestration look like? How do I speed it up? How do I manage the capability to extend capacity? I see that that's a huge issue for our customers today, is capacity management and actually seeing in advance of a threshold breach when the capacity is needed. How do I extend out to the public or ensure that I have enough resources to make those services work? And then how do I preempt outages? How do I remediate proactively? How do I use my monitors that I have already in my legacy environment in my cloud environment? And how do I successfully fulfill and ensure service performance? How do I show back the users what they're actually using so they realize that they're actually, we're charging back or showing back what the usage is for their services, and that we manage to the service delivery ongoing, so that if we have to be more, faster, quicker, more reliable, that we can adjust to that through our runtime detect to correct value chain. So as we, looked at that template, we realized all of those bullet points that I showed you in the prior slide, that was all of our blueprint for, okay, now I have to build it. I actually have to take it from theory to reality. So I really have to design services. I have to really identify how, with the resources that I need. I have to build out a catalog. And I have to figure out, how am I going to integrate, and what am I going to integrate to do service control, where I'm going to bring back my service management practices for change and configuration management and capacity management, which we did on spreadsheets. How am I going to automate that into my request to fulfillment lifecycle? And how am I going to actually do that self-healing and automated backup and restore? So we actually took that blueprint forward into deciding, what use cases we wanted to start from and where we wanted to end up. And the whole goal is to collaborate with our customers and using this model to accelerate your innovation and your transformation, and ensuring that you're getting the value out of not just the new technologies as well. So thinking about a bimodal kind of implementation, where your old and new come together to accelerate your transformation to this digital world. And this is just a recap of what are the use cases. So where are the challenges? What are the highlights of those use cases in the model? Taking it really down to tactical steps. And what are the benefits if you implement the model the way that it's laid out in this blueprint? How do the challenges of designing a service and having flexible and robust services come to life in the model, where we recommend how to use best practices to define a service. We recommend, what you should use for catalog management. What are the technical definitions that you need to design as far as integrating, monitoring, and patching and compliance. So those lifecycle activities that we have done all along are now coming together in an integrated service lifecycle for cloud. It's not that it has to be all new, and I'll continue to repeat that, because customers that want to become cost effective have to realize that their old legacy tools are well utilized in this environment. They don't have to rip and replace to move forward. And the service offerings in a catalog view, also you need to think about aggregation of catalogs and how catalogs come together with the cloud intact. So it's not that you're going to have a separate cloud service catalog and a separate business service catalog. You bring those services together to accelerate the line of business owners' use of the IT services using cloud as an underpinning, so that they can do their application migration, so they can do their application development, so they can use IT as a tool to their success in getting, the agility they want. So again, monitoring and patching and compliance and security and data analytics. So being predictive with the data that's available behind and within the cloud allows us to perform those automated remediation of events. It allows us to also to have thresholds set for capacity so that we can do smart provisioning for capacity management. We have technologies now that let us look at the hypervisors so that we can see what's going on at the volume layer of the hypervisors, so we can look at when it's important for us to flex and do dynamic provisioning. We also have the ability to provision based on policies. So there's an opportunity to make decision, I call it decision to provision. Where should I put my workload? What is the most suitable location based on the constraints of that workload or that application? And I always use backup and restore. So our model office shows that use cases with our net backup utility. Overall, the use cases were built to give our customers a starting point to mature up the ladder. Infrastructure and platform as a service is very well implemented across the world today, and of course the public cloud providers can offer those services, but you can offer those services yourself inside your own enterprise in the private cloud. So before we hand off to Sebastian, I wanted to show you the technology stack to give you a little bit of the detail of what's really inside of this cloud model as far as the tools that we've used. And you see here that there are both HPE products and third-party software that come together in this integrated model office to allow you to manage services end-to-end to support your consumers. You'll see that we do extend the ability to the public clouds, Azure and Amazon. We also include load balancing and the different database vendors. We have the net backup, as I said. We have also the ability to do catalog aggregation with the HPE Propel. And you may be seeing some service orchestration tools here that are very familiar to you based on the older technologies that we've used for CMDB and server automation type of technologies that allow us to do the standard monitoring we've done all along. So with that, I'm going to let Sebastian take over and present our model office demo that will give you an idea of how we've actually, how it looks, how these use cases look in reality. So Sebastian, take over.
Thank you, Louise. Hello, everyone. We will have a quick demo, 25 minutes of the Cloud Model Office. We have many use cases in the Cloud Model Office. We can demonstrate infrastructure service, hybrid cloud, public cloud, with many integration. Today, for this demo, we will look at one of the use case. We'll do platform as a service. So I will show you as a normal user, an engineer, how I can order an Oracle database through our tools. So first, I will start here and I will log into the user portal. So we call that the marketplace portal. It's a multi-tenant portal. Right now I'm logging as an engineer in the engineering portal. I have multiple users. A user can be part of a multiple organization and can choose where you want to connect. And even if you are in one of these portals, you can access to a multiple catalog. Here is the first page. It's a dashboard who show to a user the subscription is on, with managing with already order, plus different information about the cloud. So right there, we can see that I have 7 subscriptions, and have access also to what have been requested before. I can see my notifications, see again my service, all the order I've done. We have here, we have what we call little applets. It can be customized and can show other data coming from third-party system, like your current resource, your current cost, etc. So we have plenty of information here. Other access, you have a menu on the side here, will let you access to the different part. I will show you first what a service looks like when it's been ordered. So I've ordered a bunch of services before this webinar. I will show you first of all the database as a service that we have been ordering before. So where it is here. So this one we can see is online. Click on it and I have access to information about this particular service. So I can see it's deployed, I can see the number of server I've ordered, I can see the database name, the compliance, which host, the IP address. Okay, all of that is customizable. That can be decided if an end user can see or not see this kind of information. You see, I have access to I can see the MAC address there. Is maybe not a necessary information for me. I have access to the monitoring part. We'll go to that later on, and some other information. I have more information about the database here. I have a little icon here. This is the kind of action I can do directly from this interface. So you can see, as a user, I can decide I can run a compliance check on this database. I can run patching to get the last patch level. I can decide to change the number of CPU, change the memory, and I can also do stuff like restarting the server, start-stop server. This is also all configurable, and we can give access to many different operation to end user. If I click on manage a subscription, I can also modify subscription. That gives me access to a new set of option, bigger option. So here is the option I've selected, okay, for this particular service, and I can click on modify here and choose different option if available. On this one, for example, there's not so much I can do on this particular service, but I can decide that instead of having something who never finished, I will go to a service who will have an end date and then will be and submit this modification. So here I can decide that 14th of September 2017 is maybe too far, and I will finish that in August. August. There you go. And I submit this new value. So how did I get there? So let's try to order a service first. So I can go to the catalog, and this will show me all the catalog, all the service I have access. It shows me what the price of this service and all and a little description. So in our case, we'll go to this database as a service here for a good price of $14 plus $500 per year with think it's a bargain right there. So I click on it, and I have a bunch of options that I have to select. Again, all of that is configurable. So I will show you later into the let's say admin part of the tool how we can select what and show and decide what can be selected from end user. So I can order, let's say, a medium where I can see it's 4 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM. I can decide what will be the name of the database. So I can put VVDP, for example, and I have other option here like adding inside the monitoring, and I can add sub-option will appear, so I can enable the database, enable the server. I can add the patching, and I can add audit and compliance. Okay, and in the compliance, I can select if I want CIS or SOX compliance, and I have to give my my email. For example, when I select all these options, here I can see all the options I have selected if there is a lot. And I can go to checkout. Again, I can put a name here. So I will do just a standard recurring subscription. I have again all the options I selected. I can attach a document if I need to document, and then I submit the request. And there you go. So that's mainly what end user. It's really simple to use, and that gives them access to be able to order all kind of services. So we just order a database, but you could order, if you want, a software, a 3-tier app, an application who's run on 30 server, or you can order a simple VM running Windows. There is no real limit about what can be ordered in terms of service. So let's take a look at what's happening in the background. So here is at the same tool and same. So I will log as an admin of the tool. So I will have access to everything here as I'm a full admin, and I can configure everything and select everything. So the first thing I will show you is what we call offering. So this is what the end user is saying. That when I was selecting a service to order, that was what we call a service offering. So the service offering here are all linked to what service design, and that's the next step. So if I go to the service offering of the database, I can see this database have been published, okay, and it's published in multiple catalog. I can decide for a particular offering in a catalog if I need to connect to an approval system, to delegation approval at all, or I can decide that there's no need here, no approval, and here you see I have service manager approval. Okay. The important part is here. Here you see this is all the option, and I can decide which option are exposed that the person can see, and even if they see, I can decide can I let them change them or not. So we see we have a set of options who are predefined for this particular user. So the data center name is VLab. Okay, there is no reason for end user to change it or to access it. So it's completely hidden. They cannot see it. Virtual machine flavor that when I choose the size of the virtual machine, so this is exposed and open, and this is valid for every single option. Okay, you can decide why you want to show, how you want to show it, and you can have the same multiple service offering who all come from the same service design and just change what kind of option. You can decide, for example, that in this slot option we were talking about the size of the virtual machine. As you see, I have access to small, medium, and large because I'm in the engineering team. Potentially, you want to not expose the large option to other teams. Say they are like to your trainee, your intern, or some department who don't have the standard. So you can select that and say, I will not expose this particular sub option to this particular team. So I will create an offering for them and publish it in their own catalog. An offering can be in multiple catalog, and a user can have access to one or multiple catalogs. So there is a way for you to always have, and someone can have access to a service offering coming from multiple catalog who go to the same service design, but with a different view. This is where also you choose the pricing. Again, because you can put create multiple service offering based on same service design, you can decide that some business unit or department or group will pay a certain price and some other will pay a different price. It's up to you. You choose the currency, you choose the initial price, and then you choose if you want a recurring price. Could be zero. Some company have just you pay a one-off and you're good, and or whatever the value you want. This pricing can be dynamic, so it can be connected to an external system and change depending of your source of data. Could be extracted from, for example, from Amazon, or could be extracted from your SAP system or whatever you use. You can add documentation for this service offering. Usually, it's a small PDF file. You explain what exactly is this offer. We explain to an end user if he's not sure what he get, a bigger description with some pictures and or topology said, okay, if you go to this service offering, this is what you have. Some screenshot to illustrate. There is versioning. This is important because when you start to have this service, they are going live, they are in production, you become like a service provider. I mean, the service you sell is your it's your product. So maybe you will produce a first offering with a certain set of options. Your end user like it, but they would like to have more option or different option. That way you start to have a version 1, version 2, version 3 of the service offering. And you can decide if someone have a version 1, can he decide to go to a version 2? Is it possible, or is it too much difference between the two? When you said that you cannot upgrade, you will have to cancel. It's up to you to decide if you want to let someone go from one offering to another. So I talk a lot about service design. So that at the core of our tool is what we call the service designer. So that way you create really this system. So a design is made of a component and resource offering. So first I will show you what a design looks like. So here I have plenty of design. So I will focus on the one I've demonstrated. So where it is? I'm going too fast. He was there just before. Because of that, that all my Azure design. I lost my database design. I will take. Okay, up. He's here. So there's a little bit of delay between the time I'm clicking and the time it's refreshing on my screen. So I'm missing. Okay. Okay, I will stop going back and forth. So I will take this one. Okay. Again, in design, we have the notion of versioning, and we can go from one design to another. So you have an overview of the design, and you have the design by itself. So here he show you how design is made. Okay, you will see components on this design. This is all the component design. These components are made of what we call resource offering. And properties mainly. Properties are basically variable and value you pass to the resource offering. The resource offering is what really executes your process to create this design. So here, each component is related to each other, and the service designer helps you to put this component all together to decide in which order you want to create them and how they relate to each other. This is where you decide what is doable for this service, because you will decide to expose some of this property. You will decide which action are possible and how they are executed. Okay, everything is automated behind the scene, so you have full control of this service, and the end user cannot stray away from what you decide to expose or what you decide to do. Okay, so we can easily add component. I can click here, and not this one because it's published, so I cannot change it. But when you can click on a component, you click on add a component, and it will add a sub-component, and then you can create more and more complex design. This one is really simple. As you see, it's just a simple Windows server in a server group. I could add a second group and a third group, and I could put multiple servers in each of these groups. I can also decide to not even specify how many servers I want. I can create this group to be what we call a clone, and then it will just take a number from the outside, or from like an option, or from another system, to decide how many servers it will create. When you do that, that means also that you can have external system who can increase and decrease this number of servers in a particular group. That let us create really complex design, like with a third 3-tier application, where you will have a group for the web server, you will have a group for the app server, and a group for the database server. All of them will be multiple servers, with different rules for the monitoring, different rules for how they scale, what is their starting point, what is their endpoint to scale. And you can even deploy these different server in different places. You can decide that the group with the database will be deployed on bare metal, or will be part of an, let's say, an Oracle cluster. Then the app server will be on a private virtual machine, and the web server will be maybe containers, or could be in a public cloud, or a mix of the two. Okay, so this is where we can create more and more complex service by adding more and more components. This is where we decide what are the options I want to expose. So this one is another service, so it's not exactly the service we demonstrate, but basically you decide again, okay, in my service at a maximum, I will offer all these options. Okay, this is the boundary of my option. It could be as simple as this is where I decide between small, medium, large, and extra large. This is where I decide that the audits that you can choose from our PCI and SOX and so on. So here you really decide what options are available for this particular service. Later on, as we see in the service offering, someone who is different than the designer can pick and choose which option they want to really expose to the end user. Again, we have the notion of versioning for services, and that means we can upgrade from one service to another. Okay, so again, you can create a simple IaaS Windows service in 2015. Arrive 2017, there's new version of Windows. You want to be able to migrate your end user from their version of Windows to a new one. You take these services, you create a new version of the service where you adapt the value and create also an automated flow to upgrade from A to B. And then you select here, say, okay, I can let my customer to upgrade for the version 1 to the version 2. Okay, and that will automate behind the scene when they click on upgrade to go from a version of OS to another. I use that as an example. That can be anything. You can decide that suddenly people who have been deploying a WebLogic single node need to be forced into a WebLogic cluster, and they need to go. You force them to go into the version 2 where you deploy a WebLogic cluster. You can enforce standard of architecture through this mean. I will go up again. So where come from this component? So this component, we have what we call a palette. So out of the box in the tool, we have this bunch of components who cover, most of your needs. So the application layers, the infrastructure service, you see network connection, load balancer, server, group of server, and so on and so on. You can create your own palette. We have also content where we have customized palette who are dedicated to a particular technology, like we have the Microsoft Azure palette here. We have the VMware palette, Amazon palette, and so on. It can be extended, but you can also create your own component. If I select the most common, if I select the server, basically what it means, that define what are the default property of a component. So a server will have a disk size, will be part of a domain, will have a host name, and so on. So by this way, you also standardize how your service will be built. Okay, you can create your own component and say my component server need to have this property, and everyone need to use them. You can even what we could create from there template. So a template here, if I click on template, and I will say on the template, I can add additional property for this particular template, and and the most important, I can add what we call resource binding. So what does that mean? The resource bindings that come from this resource offering, and I will show you that next. That means I can select what operation or what automation is mandatory for this particular component. So I can select compute, and I can say, okay, the Vivid server must use VMware. Okay, and I will select the vCenter compute I have here. Okay. The advantage of that is now when you architect, they create their design, they don't have to think or to care about exactly which resource offering they need to create this component. They just drag and drop the particular component template, the Vivid server in this case, and automatically we'll have all the property already set. Some of the property you can almost set the value if you want, and you will have all the resource binding set. So you just have to then link this server together to decide, okay, I need 5 of this server and 2 of this other type of server, and I will create first this the database server, then the app server, and so on. Choose just the order. Okay. So I will go now to what is the resource offering. So that what we use to basically create this component. Resource offering is really we are at the level where we start to be into the automation. Okay, so resource offering. Where is VMware? It's an aggregate of what we call orchestrator flow that will execute all this action against a resource provider. Okay, so we have resource provider here. In your case, it's vCenter. I will show you. We have Amazon, we have Azure, we have Chef, we have plenty of resource provider, and you can extend to almost everything you need. We can add custom property, but the most important part here is the part of the life cycle. This is where you decide, okay, I want to execute, I want to deploy a VM, so I will execute the automation I need to deploy a VM during this deploy phase. We have multiple phases, none of them are mandatory. You can decide that I just want to execute one particular automation in one particular phase. You can decide that you want to execute flow to all the phase. It's the more the more and more complex is your service, the more phase you will use, the more automation. But you can build upon that. Okay, you can start start really simple, as you see. I just have one flow of what we call orchestrator flow here to execute a vCenter automation, but it can be way more complex. Okay, I will switch to the second tool that we use a lot, and I will come back later because I'm starting to be slightly over time there. When I talk about this automation, give me a second. Up there, we need to refresh. Okay. When I talk about, process automation, we use what we call the tool operation orchestration. This is an operation tool, as the name indicates, and that's what we will execute all this flow. So behind the scene, you can have access to a dashboard show you everything we have been executed, how we executed, and who has launched it, and so on. You have the name and so on. Okay. When all of that is done, Okay, this orchestrator will talk to provider. It can talk to vCenter, for example. Here we can see that at the VM we have started to be created. That is the previous VM I was showing you, the first database we created, and we have the 2 CPU and 4 gigs of RAM. And it can talk to other tool. This is a VMware, but I can talk to Chef, to Amazon, etc., etc. We have one of our tools we use in this demo is what we call database and middleware automation. And if you remember, during the option, I select what kind of audit compliance I want. So the database I've already deployed, I have this report we've been run for the CIS benchmark. And it will show me, and I can run this report on a schedule. I can have this report run when I'm doing the UI, and it show me if I pass or not the compliance for this particular database. We have audit compliance for a database, but also for operating system. Okay, this can be seen two ways. It can be for the operation team to just follow that all their database in the cloud are still compliant, or by the end user to make sure that their database they use in the cloud are compliant. Okay. We have also access, and I will come back here to the CSA, to analytics. I think it's an important part. It's really for the operation team and for the director and VP to see what is the status of their cloud. For example, here it's resource analytics. All the data you will see have been preloaded data. We have because we need 2 years of data to have something kind of meaningful here. So this is not linked to what I just ordered. This is data we have for 2 years of let's say an hybrid cloud using Amazon, Hyper-V, and vCenter. Okay, so we can see all for the last 2 years what have been done. We can have the total cost of the resource we use in dollar. We can use the amount of used resource in terms of storage in terabyte in each of the providers here. How many instances running. We have one here is interesting. It's a percentage of server utilization. So we aggregate the data coming from the service, okay, which service we have ordered and which value they have and so on in terms of CPU, memory storage. And we also aggregate the data from the monitoring. We indicate what is your CPU utilization, for example, and you compare the two, and it can show you in your report: are you overutilizing your virtual machine or your resource, or are you underutilizing? Okay, and that can give you a view of to optimize how you will do your cloud. I need to accelerate a little bit because we are of the hour. We have another view with the service analytics. Okay, here again we can give you like access to KPI, to your service revenue. Refresh a minute, and it's really for VP and sometimes for the CFO to see, okay, what is the spending and who is spending money into the cloud. For example, here we can see that the sales team here on the last quarter, I've used like $35 million of cloud services. We can imagine that the CFO will have questioned about it. Why they need so much compute capacity for a single department? Okay. I think I will stop there. So we have still 5 minutes. I don't want to run too much out of time. So we will go to the next slide. So we will go into the Q&A now.
Q&A, yeah, right. Thanks, Sebastian. So what Sebastian was demoing, you could see that Cloud Service Automation was the cloud management platform that he was using to demonstrate how to design the service, how to define the resource providers, how to design the attributes of the service, and then how you could use some management statistics from the service actually running in real time. So, and he I think, Seb, you ran out of time to show everything, but pretty much
yes.
Most of it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm missing to show the monitoring also. There's way more to show on this demo because we have a lot of in-deep integration between the services and different tools. So there is really more to show on this demo.
Okay. But so with that, so to save some time for the audience to ask some questions, feel free to ask some questions in the question manager. And I'm seeing a question, is CSA and OO available from the HPE SaaS cloud? From our SaaS model. Sebastian, are they available today in SaaS?
No,
not
they are
yet,
not.
Right?
They are not available today into the SaaS model. I know there's plan for it, but right now, if you go to the SaaS portal of HPE, you will not find CSA or Orchestrator. Orchestrator should be the first one you will see there.
There's a question. How do we use the model for a POC or a pilot? So most of our customers use the model office to give their organizations the idea of how to start, how to get started, and what are the components that need to be worried about, like standardizing on your platform definitions. And there's a lot of considerations around policies. So these are the things that you'll catch as you go through and use the model. Also, we've implemented it for a pilot execution on premise in an enterprise. We have also done exactly what Sebastian's done, but over a couple of weeks of actually in-depth details of going through each one of the steps that I laid out in the template. So it does take some time. This was just a high-level flavor for it. Let's see, what else am I seeing? Is the Model Office available for purchase? We use the Model Office as a business development opportunity for us. So the Model Office is available for demo, POC, and pilot. In a pilot environment, we would do an SOW for service fees, yes. Do you support integration with public cloud vendors? If yes, which one? Today, we have integration content for the Azure and Amazon clouds, and we are working on additional content for Rackspace. And is there any other Seb that you've integrated across your customers?
No, mainly Azure Amazon. I know we're also working for the Google Cloud integration, and also other cloud were specific to EMEA. But the two main ones are that we have receiving requests are Azure and Amazon.
Here's a good question for you, Seb. Let's see. Can you move data from AWS cloud to private cloud storage? Does this create data export charges?
That will you can move data that will create export charge. That can be really high. Some customers have been surprised how much amount of money they have to pay Amazon when they want to retrieve their data. So it's important to know which data you store and where you store it in Amazon. For example, there is a service called Glacier for deep storage, who keep the data there for really cheap, but to make the retrieval of said data really expensive. At the opposite, you can have like a S3 storage, who store was more expensive than Glacier and store not as much, but getting back your data from S3 is quite simple and just incur like network cost.
Okay, so we're running out of time, I see. So I wanted to send it back to Rocky, and we'll answer any questions that are in the queue as we stated in the beginning, that we'll make sure that they come across on the follow-up. So thanks, everyone. So Rocky, back to you.
Thanks, Louise. So I think there's just a couple of things here. So here's a link to watch the Model Office in action. So get a good feel for things that maybe we didn't cover today. And I think the next slide, if there is another one. We've tried to answer all the questions that were here. There's a short survey after this webinar. Please fill it in. The more feedback, the better, so that we can keep bringing you presentations like this that are relevant. And with that, I think we are done. Thanks for attending and thanks for presenting. Everyone have a great day.